Okay? So 140 different strategies used to increase achievement. Homework is one of them, and he determined which one was the best, which one's the worst. He found homework was number 88. 88. That means there's 87 other things that could be done to help improve student achievement. Do you want to know what number one was?
Yeah.
Number one was student self-reporting. Kind of like student-led conferences, when a student is able to articulate their own learning, what they know about their learning, what they have to do to improve. That was number one. After number one, we had Montessori learning. But number one was that. Yeah. Okay. The reason why I share that with you is we still have this misconception that exists in our professional group that some teachers believe that if a child is struggling, they have to send homework home so that that person can get caught up. And this is a vicious cycle. Like, think about it for a moment. When you assign homework as a teacher that's due the next day, what tends to happen? You start your class, and there's about 6 or 7 kids that may not have their homework done. So then what do you do as a teacher? You're trying to, well, either they're sitting there not learning at all, or else you're trying to get the worksheet or whatever you sent for homework, get an extra copy because even they left that at home or never brought it back. And it's just, you're scrambling here to try to help those 7. Well, how about the students that are engaged in school? What do you notice? You notice they always get their homework done. It's always done. But you're always struggling with those same kids in your class. And do you see improvement over time? Do you see them really getting better and better and better? No. And what's happening? They are getting less engaged. And in fact, our school district has been working with the University of Calgary, the Galileo Project, to learn more about a new study that was called "What Did You Do in School Today?" And it was focused on student engagement. And they broke down engagement into social engagement, academic engagement, which is like the formal part of schooling, and then the real intellectual engagement, where children felt a strong connection with school. They were genuinely there to learn, and they were passionate about learning. And they charted the data that they received from 32,000 students. This is their initial data. It's since grown to, they've surveyed over 80,000 students, and they're working now in all of our high schools where they will be doing the same survey questions so that we can get data in our high schools to find out how engaged are our students at the high school level. And one of the most significant things that they found is that if you look here at grade 6, you got, not bad, 60%. So a little more than half of your class is engaged. But as the kids go up to grade levels, you can see it's decreasing significantly. And then, oh, the light at the end of the tunnel is looking good because there's some improvement in grade 12. Well, over here in grade 12, what's happened is the kids that were causing all the problem, that weren't doing their homework, that weren't engaged, they dropped out of school. So they're no longer part of the study anymore. So that's how they explain that little increase at the end. When we talk about engagement, one student described it best. Well, I have to go to school today, so I have to unplug myself. Using technology, if we go back to that little video that we saw, using text messaging, that will be the future. And I know we are working in instructional services with IT and other departments to explore how can we make these things happen. But we know that there's so many other issues, safety of children, the technology, the hardware itself. So these things take time. They just can't happen overnight. But we know that there are some wonderful opportunities and things that are happening in our district. For example, next year at Bishop Carroll High School, we're going to be phasing in where all the grade 10 students will have their own laptop. So a one-to-one laptop project. In grade 11 and 12, it'll be optional. But we're investing in that school a whole bunch of hardware to make it possible to increase student engagement as we move forward. What else are people saying about homework? I mentioned to you earlier that one person who's famous in the field of homework is Alfie Cohen in his book, The Homework Myth. And so we're going to take a moment just to listen to a couple minutes of Elfie as he addressed
A Senior Dad Interview. Stan Goldberg interviews Alfie Cohen, author of The Homework Myth. Are schools firmly committed to homework because of no tests left behind?
Well, I think that's one of about half a dozen reasons that I argue for in the book as explaining why it is that homework continues to be assigned and accepted despite evidence that it doesn't seem to be effective. I think that most parents are already familiar with the costs of homework, the exhaustion, the frustration that kids experience, the family conflict and nagging, the lack of time for kids to do what they get pleasure from doing after spending a full day in school, and most disturbingly, the possibility that some kids are losing interest in learning itself and reading, not merely in homework, because of the homework. But even though we're familiar with the downside, most parents assume that it's all worth it, that there are compensating benefits, that homework is useful for helping kids to learn better, to raise their achievement, to develop good work habits, and the like. And so I dug into the data to see what actually has been established. And basically I found three things. First, no study has ever demonstrated any academic benefit to doing homework before kids are in high school, which I think is an astonishing fact, given how more and more homework is being piled on younger and younger children, precisely where the research supporting homework isn't just dubious, it's non-existent. Second, even at the high school level, there is only a weak correlation between any standard measures of achievement and doing homework, or the amount of homework one does. And more sophisticated statistical techniques, when they're applied, tend to make that correlation disappear. In any case, there isn't any evidence that even when the two go together, that is, when the same kids who get good test scores also get a lot of homework, that doesn't prove they did well because of the homework. And third, the idea that homework provides non-academic advantages, that it builds character or teaches good work habits or gives kids self-discipline or responsibility. This is basically an urban myth, or except we shouldn't call it an urban myth because people accept it in the suburbs as well. But basically the notion that homework has these effects has never been shown empirically. So what we seem to have then is all pain with no gain.
Well, I've always heard...
So we're going to stop there with Elfie, and I just wanted to share again that I kind of see him as a radical person against homework. He does have some very intelligent things to share, but as a school district, our homework committee has taken the stance that there is a place for homework in our schools. So that's really important as leaders in our district that you're on board with that. I'm not here to say that no, homework's all bad, but I think we need to take a step back and analyze the homework that we are sending home and to make sure it's quality homework. And when we talk about homework, we're not only talking about homework, but we're talking about what happened in that lesson that resulted in the homework in the first place. And remember how I had mentioned to you there's a few children that don't get the homework done, but we just keep on piling it on them, and little Johnny's struggling, so let's give him more homework to get him up to speed. Maybe we should be taking a step back, and if we're assigning the assignment in class, well, Johnny's assignment is significantly different than the other kids, resulting in him not having that homework. And I would like to see what happens in that classroom. I would suspect that little Johnny's probably going to be happier because he doesn't have all that homework now to take home. He may be doing work at his own level, and this goes back to differentiation. And that's what we want to see happening in all of our schools, and even with homework. So when you're out there observing teachers, evaluating teachers, take some time and talk to them about homework, or observe them and find out what is their homework practice, and start to ask them some of the questions that we are talking about today. You know, do you ever change the homework that you send home for particular students?